This is the Sales Babble Podcast, episode 392, Sell Different with Lee Salz.
Welcome to Sales Babble, the podcast that shares selling secrets for non-sellers. And now your host, Pat Helmers.
Hello, Sales Babblers. This is Pat Helmers, and our guest today is Lee Salz. In this episode, we talk about the strategy side of outreach with the goal of getting your company to stand out from the rest. From the buyer's point of view, all vendors look alike. Today, we talk about how to beat the competition to win more deals at the prices you want. Welcome back, Lee. Are you ready to babble?
I am ready. I was born ready.
You were born ready. You're launching a book this week? This month, is it?
It launched yesterday.
It launched yesterday. That would be September 14th, called Sell Differently, an all-new sales differentiating strategy to outsmart, outmaneuver, and outsell the competition. This is the second time I said that you were on the podcast because
It is.
I went and looked. It was on October. It was October 2nd. And there was a different book. You had a book called Sales Differentiation. So what's the difference between Sales Differentiation book and the Sell Different book?
Really? Pat, you invite me back on your show. We're talking for just a couple of minutes and you're going to put me on the spot and ask me what's different about my book. I mean, is that really nice? Is that fair?
It's a differentiation conversation, right?
Pat, of course that's a fair question. Salespeople, whether your buyers ask you that question or not, that question's on their mind every time they meet with you. They want to know what's different. And if you can't articulate it, if you can't demonstrate it, you know what's going to win the day? Price.
Yeah.
That's it. So let me answer your question about what's different about Sell Different. I think you'd agree, Pat, that sales has never been tougher than it is today. Competition's fierce. Differences in features and functions have become subtle when you look at the differences in providers. But executives aren't coming along. Hey, salespeople, I feel really bad. We're going to cut your quota in half and go ahead and sell the deal at 20 fewer points on margin. We're okay with that. Right, Patty, you haven't seen any executives doing that, have you? No. They still expect salespeople to win at high rates while protecting margins, or, as I just trademarked, win more deals at the prices you want. But how do you do that when the differences in what you're selling are so slight? You have to sell different, which means looking at every touch point in the buyer-seller relationship and identifying ways to outsmart, outmaneuver, and outsell the competition. So in the book, I get into how you generate leads, how you prospect, how you handle discovery meetings, how you sell virtually. When I wrote the book proposal for HarperCollins, there wasn't a chapter on virtual selling, Pat. And then this little thing happened, the pandemic. Now there's a chapter on virtual selling, dealing with requests for pilot programs and much, much more. It doesn't matter what you're selling, a product, service, technology, or to whom you're selling, B2B, B2C, it doesn't matter. These are strategies and techniques that neutralize those elements to help you win more deals at the prices that you want. So each of the 15 chapters presents a single strategy that walks you through step by step how to put it into practice. And I'll give you a little peek in the kitchen. When I wrote this book, the first round of editing, I gave the manuscript to several corporate clients, people who would be the target audience for the book. And I asked them, I said, what could you not implement based on how I presented it in the manuscript? Because my goal with Sell Different is for you not to have to spend one penny to work with me or anyone else to put it into practice. And so that was the first step, was to make sure that if you read this book, you could put those concepts and strategies into practice.
This is a really relevant book because from the buyer's point of view, in these days, we're always talking about the buyer now. We're not talking about the seller's point of view.
That's right. At least we should be. I agree with you.
Right. We all look like commodities. We all look the same. What can we do about this? You told an interesting story about your son being marketed by athletic recruiters to play baseball and whatnot. And there was one recurring theme in there that really struck to me. Maybe you could share what that was.
Yeah, it's actually a really neat story, and it's in chapter 1 of Sell Different, which, by the way, if you go to selldifferentbook.com, you could download chapter 1 for free and read more about the story.
Excellent.
My oldest son, Steven, played high school baseball with aspirations of playing in college. And the summer between his junior and senior years, he was asked to play on our American Legion baseball team. And if you're not familiar with that program, that's where college scouts come looking to recruit talent. And Pat, during a 1-week tournament, Steven hit 4 home runs and 3 doubles with all these college coaches in attendance. So all of a sudden now the phone's ringing off the hook. Now, if you've ever been through a college recruiting process before, you know it's a sale. These coaches are trying to sell you on their institution, but they can't differentiate what they sell. They can't add a major, can't build a dorm, can't move the campus. They're all fixed assets. So what they have to do is sell different, which means differentiating their sales approach. And Pat, some coaches were fantastic. Some failed miserably at it. Now, you know when you first drive onto a college campus, as soon as you cross the border, your blood pressure jumps about 30 points. You know why that is, Pat? And it's not the tuition. You can't find a place to park. Every single lot says, park here, and we're going to tow you, but welcome to our fine institution. Well, this one school we visited, we pull into the parking lot, and there's a spot with Steven's name on it. Stopped us dead in our tracks. We go inside. There's an agenda for the day with Steven's name printed at the top. What did it cost this university to do these two things? A penny, maybe for the paper and the ink? But think about what they did. They made us feel like Steven was the only athlete they were recruiting for any sport anywhere on the planet. Of course, that wasn't the case, but that's how they made me feel. That's how they made Steven feel, my wife feel, and his younger brother. And that's an important piece that I'll come back to. In sales, we have that same opportunity, but we miss it. We miss it. It's just another lead. It's just another discovery meeting. It's just another presentation. It's just another proposal. We forget to make buyers feel special. And every one of us, I don't care what you're selling, every one of us has that opportunity in the way that we shape the buying experience. You know, we often hear, Pat, that sales is a numbers game, right? And I only partially agree with that statement. If you see sales as strictly a numbers game, you know what happens as a result? You make the people you're selling to feel like a number. And Pat, I've never heard anybody say, boy, I want to feel like a number.
No, people want to feel special.
Absolutely. So there were 7 schools recruiting Steven after that performance. The school that was number 1 on his list, bags packed, this is where he was going, Pat, was number 7 at the end of the process. They didn't get rid of a major. They didn't knock down a dorm. They didn't move the campus. His perception changed based on the recruiting experience, how he was being sold. So I mentioned my other son, David, pitcher. He went through the recruiting process. He's nationally recognized as a pitcher. That school, Pat, was not on his list to even consider.
Wow.
So when you make someone feel like a number, you don't just lose that deal. They tell other people. It's like the old shampoo commercial. Remember that, Pat? And they told 2 friends and so on and so on and so on. There's a compounding effect. So if we're making people feel like a number, you know who gets this best, Pat? Folks, actors, like Broadway actors. They are doing the same show twice a day for how long? Years, oftentimes.
Sometimes.
Right? And they know for them, it's repetitive. But for their audience, it's the one time they're seeing the show. So they have to make that show feel like it's the first time and the only time they're ever going to deliver it. And that's what we have to do in sales. For you, it may be the 20th phone call of the day on the same product. For them, it was just one. It was just one. Make them feel special.
Make them feel special. That's one thing that I saw in reading this book was the recurring theme. This whole idea of being authentic, being real, treating people like they're real human beings.
What a concept, huh?
What
Make people feel like real human beings.
Another thing that I thought differentiated this book from a lot of other sales books, and I get a lot of them here on Sales Babble, is that the 16-day prospecting campaign. What I liked about this is I get asked about stuff like this. How often? What do I do? Step by step. Maybe you could walk us through that a little bit.
Sure. So when we look at prospecting strategy, again, back to what I said a moment ago about sales oftentimes appears to be a numbers game. But I believe there's two sides of the equation. There's a quantitative side and a qualitative side. So a qualitative side means there's purpose for our outreach. We're not just making them feel like a number, like we talked about. But we also need strategy on the quantitative side. No one in sales gets paid for hard work. At least, Pat, I haven't met anybody. Have you?
No. No.
Right? We get paid for results in sales.
Yep, that's right. That's what makes us
sales
unique
manager,
from
right?
all the other professions out there that are paid hourly or on salary. We're paid on results.
We're paid on results. So when we look at prospecting, I mean, we've all seen those numbers about the number of attempts that it takes to reach someone live, and that number keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But what's missing is the strategy side of the outreach. So in other words, calling the same person at 10 a.m. every day for 5 days and you don't reach them, and you say, okay, well, I guess I'll move on. Okay, so you had some numbers there. You made the attempts, but you had no strategy there. So in the campaign that you're referencing,
yep,
it puts strategy in place for the quantitative side of the equation. And one of the techniques, and I can't take credit for this, and I credit the salesperson who uses this for that. Her name is Lisa. One of the components of the outreach, and we have to thank our friends at Microsoft for this, when you send someone an invite and they use Outlook, whether they accept the invite or not, it appears in the calendar. So imagine as part of the campaign. I don't know if that makes
sense.
What's that?
I don't know if that makes sense.
I know, but it does. So imagine you leave a voicemail message saying, I'm going to try you back again tomorrow at 10:15 a.m. and I'll send you an invite so you're expecting my call. Now I'm not saying this is the first technique used, but it's a component of the overall prospecting rhythm. So you send that invite. Now it's in the calendar. The purpose of this prospecting rhythm is to reach elusive prospects. It's hard to reach people. If you look at today, you have so many people working from home. You have consolidation where someone who would have had a single role in a company is wearing multiple hats. So they're not just sitting around at their desk in their office counting ceiling tiles. So we have to be creative in the outreach, because if we don't reach them, there's never a meeting. If there's no meeting, there's no proposal. If there's no proposal, there's no win, no commission check, right? Very logical.
Right.
And that's what the prospecting rhythm is designed to do.
Just looking at it here, send a personalized email to create intrigue. Day 1. Day 2, call, leave a voicemail. Day 3, call a different time.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
A different time. So you want to talk about voicemail as part of prospecting?
Yeah, because I think it's critical because people don't answer their phones.
Well, it's a hot topic. I'm going to show my age here. I'm 52 years old. But you remember the old Miller Lite commercials? Tastes great, less filling?
Yes.
You could do that same thing on the topic of voicemail messages. So imagine a big keynote audience, and I'll ask, who believes in leaving voicemail messages as part of prospecting? And it is. It's like the old taste great, less filling conversation. People passionate on both sides of the subject. But then I'll ask them, I'll say, so imagine after our program today, you check your voicemail and there's a message from a salesperson saying, hey, I've got $10,000 for you. Give me a call. And I'll ask the audience, you calling him back? Pat, no hands go up. So I'll try again. What if the message was, I can cut your cell phone bills in half? You're calling him back. Again, no hands go up. I said, give me one more shot at this. How about if the message was, I can reduce your interest rates by 5%? And again, no one raised their hand. So I've offered money. I've offered cost reduction, and still they wouldn't call me back.
Right.
Right? So I asked, so what could I possibly say in a voicemail message that would get you to call me back? Pat, you know what the answer is? Nothing. Nothing. There's only one time you get a return call from a voicemail message. You know when that is? Serendipity. Meaning, I happen to be staring at my cell phone bill saying, there must be another supplier out there, another provider out there that has a cheaper price. And you happen to leave me a message about reducing my cell phone costs. Yeah, there's a likelihood I'm going to return that call because now this is something I'm paying attention to.
See, that's the numbers game business, right? You just happen to call them when they just happen to have a need, with the idea that if I call enough of them, then I'll bump up the likelihood that I'll find somebody who has that need.
Right. And so now our listeners think I'm anti-voicemail as part of prospecting. I'm not. I'm a huge proponent of voicemail, but I think we need to reconsider our perspective of it. Because salespeople get so frustrated. I leave all these voicemail messages. No one calls me back. Let's take it off the table. Let's say they're not calling us back. And let's say there's a meaningful way we can use voicemail during prospecting. What if we use it to spark intrigue, wet their whistle, so when we reach them live, they have some context for the conversation? Not sharing so much that they can make a yes-no decision, but spark intrigue so that they are interested in having a conversation with me. Now, Pat, in the voicemail message, we even say, I'm not expecting you to call me back. Of course, you still leave your number in case you have serendipity. Boy, isn't that a different message? I'm not expecting you to call me back.
That is completely different, right?
But our purpose, we say, here's a medium here using voicemail, but is there a way we can use this more effectively than today, which is we leave some convoluted message hoping for a return call, and then we get irritated because we left 100 of these and not one person called us back. It's a valid medium. Everyone checks their voicemail.
I like to think of them as little radio commercials.
There you go.
If you use it right, because they do listen to them all the way in. Unlike an email, they may never even see. It may go in a spam folder.
So we need to take that off the table. So that's one of the components in that 16-day prospecting rhythm. It doesn't say you leave a voicemail message every day. There are some days where you do, some days where you don't. And each step builds on the prior, all with the fundamental goal of reaching that elusive prospect.
Another thing you brought up in the book was finding qualified clients, because why waste time talking to people who aren't really itching to buy? How do you do that?
So in other words, you're asking me, how do you find more of your best clients?
Yeah.
Okay. I find executives and salespeople work so hard trying to find more of those best clients. And you notice I didn't say biggest, I said best. Those aren't synonymous because a large client could be low margin, could have a complex solution that you don't want to replicate. So when I say more of your best clients, I mean these are clients that if you could stick them in your copier and replicate them to grow the business, you do it in a heartbeat. Now, Pat, do your listeners like free stuff?
Sure.
All right. Well, if you don't have clarity on what your best client looks like, go to targetclientsprofile.com and you can download this worksheet that has 9 components that will help you have clarity on what that best client is. So I'm going to share with you a strategy. You have to have that clarity or the strategy won't work. And this strategy, Pat, I'm batting 1,000 with this. I literally have never had a salesperson try it and come away empty-handed. Intrigued?
I am indeed.
All right. So here's how it works. You're going to select 10 clients that meet that criteria of your best client, meaning you'd stick them in a copier as a way to grow the business if you could. For each of those 10, you're going to have a conversation. Not an email, not a text. I know this is 2021 and we like to shortcut things, but we're not sending emails, we're not sending a text, and we're not leaving a voicemail message. This is either on the phone, live, or in person.
Right.
And during the conversation, you're going to ask a key question. And let me set the stage for that question. Pat, you've been working with us a long time, so you're familiar with what we offer and the quality of what we offer. Now, here's the big question. If you were me, what associations would you be active in? What conferences would you attend? What events would you go to? What would you be reading to meet more people like you? Selling doesn't have to be so complicated. It's an open book test. You want to find more of your best clients? Ask the ones that you have for guidance. Now, you'll notice, Pat, during this conversation, I wasn't upselling. I wasn't cross-selling. I wasn't asking for referrals. All I was doing was asking them to take my hat, place it on their head for a moment, and provide me with their counsel. And you'll find people are really gracious. They want to help. They got to be asked, but they really want to help. And one of the components of that question that really fosters that is that meet more people like you. It strokes their ego. So you want to hear a couple of examples? I told you I'm batting 1,000 with this. I got a couple of great stories of clients that have used this.
Sure.
Okay. So this was for a coaching client. It was a group, and tasked them with having 10 of these conversations over a 2-week period. And we were going to have an update call at the end of the 2 weeks. Just before the call, I get an email from the sales manager apologizing. We've been really busy. We were only able to have 4 of these conversations, and I've attached them. I apologize. I opened the attachment, Pat. 4 pages of notes from 4 conversations. There was no need for an apology. That was outstanding.
Right.
Got another coaching client, just a single salesperson, gave him the assignment again. Got 7 done in 2 weeks. Based on those conversations, he had a 45-minute update for me. He found out about a technology council in his own backyard that he didn't even know existed. And his client said to him, I could bring you as my guest if you'd like. And then a couple of months ago, he actually presented to that council. These were CIOs. All the prospecting in the world couldn't get in front of him. Now he had the audience. Now, one of those 7 conversations, the if you were me conversations, he had in person, and his CEO was sitting next to him. CEO didn't know about this strategy. And towards the end of the meeting, my coaching client asked the if you were me question, and the CEO was floored. And that night, I get an email from the CEO, very brief email. It says, Lee, it feels like this is the question I've been missing for the last 15 years of my life. Thank you. Watched it in action today, nearly cried, spectacular. That's word for word out of his email.
Nearly cried.
Right? Right? And Pat, back to what I said a few minutes ago. What does it cost you to put this strategy in place?
Nothing.
Not a nickel. I'm not asking you to spend any money. Follow the steps that I lay out in the book, and you can put this into practice.
I love it. If people want to connect with you, people want to get a copy of this book, find you online, where's the best place to do that?
So you can always connect with me on LinkedIn. As far as to learn more about the book, if you go to selldifferencebook.com, you can even download, as I mentioned earlier, the first chapter for free. And we just started the book launch, as you mentioned before, Pat. Anyone that buys the book during the book launch, you'll see it on selldifferentbook.com. You can sign up for access to my new Sales Differentiation Minute video series, 52 weeks. Every week, you're going to get a link to a video to help you implement what you read. And those videos are normally just available to my consulting clients and my keynote audiences. It's part of the package. They're not in the public domain. Like you can't go on YouTube and go download them. You can't find them. If you buy the book, you just have to buy one for yourself.
Yep.
Sign up for it, and you'll get that video series.
And do they drip out on a specific day or?
On Thursdays, they go out.
Cool. Well, Lee, thanks again for coming back here to Sales Babble. I really appreciate it.
Pat, thank you so much. I get a kick out of these talks. Awesome. Pat, thank you.
As I mentioned last week, this October, there's going to be some big changes here at Sales Babble. We're finalizing the details as I speak, so I can't really share them. So stay tuned. In the meanwhile, to connect with Lee Salz, you can find links to him and his new book in the show notes at www.salesbabble.com. If you could take a moment to share this episode with a colleague or a friend who's in sales or marketing, I would really appreciate that. Just one person who you think would find value hearing stories from others in the industry. That's all I've got for this week, folks. Until next week, take care and have a highly successful and a profitable selling day.
Thank you for listening to the Sales Babble podcast. Find us at www.salesbabble.com.
This is a production of Habanero Media.